Welcome to Divorced Muslims, A Second Chance, the podcast that uplifts voices for both divorced and single Muslims. Alhamdulillah wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah amma ba'd rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri wahlul 'uqdatan min lisani yafqahu qawli. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu to all our listeners, and welcome back to another episode of our podcast Divorced Muslims, A Second Chance. In today's episode, we are joined by brother Farook, who has a few social media pages with the handle of disqualified_dads. And essentially, if I was to describe him from what I've seen of him, he's somebody who raises awareness of the difficulties around being a non-resident parent. And for those of you who don't know what a non-resident parent is essentially a parent who does not live in the same household as their child, usually following a separation or divorce. But I'll hand it over to our brother Farook to introduce himself to our listeners.
Yes, Assalamu alaikum. Thank you for having me. My name is Brother Farook. I am from Disqualified Dads. That's my channel. I raise awareness around the whole family court system, divorce, separation, and the struggles and trials and tribulations that unfortunately a father and a father's extended family can go through upon separation and divorce and, losing contact with your children and whatnot.
Yes, and I think a good starting point, Brother Farook, is let's talk about you personally. So, a few quick fire questions. How long ago was your divorce?
March 16, 2022 was, I call it D-Day. And I just had an Islamic nikah. On that day, March 16, 2022, I issued 3 talaqs to my missus at the time. And that was D-Day. That's when it all started. That's when I entered this whole new realm and this world that, again, you hear about it, you have an idea of it, but it's like this world that coexists that I entered into. And my whole paradigm shifted. Everything was turned upside down.
Yeah, inshallah, we'll get into that. And how long were you married for?
10 years, decade.
And how did you come across your ex-partner?
So when I was looking at the time to get married, speaking to friends and family and whatnot, and there was a family that I knew of in the area. I was just in conversation and he said he had someone in his family, a cousin of his, who was looking. So I said, all right, introduce us and whatnot. So this basically friend of mine that I knew, he introduced us and sort of just went from there.
Okay. So we're going to have to dive back then into the story. And I guess people would want to know what happened. Tell us about how it all ended. Tell us about your divorce story.
I was on night shift that night. I came home that morning. And after the school run, I walked in and I issued 3 talaqs. That's it. It was simple as that.
So that's how you implemented it. But we want to know, what everyone wants to know is why, what went wrong in the marriage?
What went wrong? I have to now go back to the start to explain this. The thing is, nothing went wrong. It just wasn't right from the off. It was the wrong people together. Ultimately, that's one way of describing it. But the other issue is the main issue, and the issue that I find that a lot of people are suffering with and suffering in silence, and a lot of people that I coach and help now get through this, is when you're with someone who unfortunately has some form of personality disorder or emotional irregularity or emotional instability, you're never going to be able to fix them. So when you end up with someone like that, it's a prison sentence. That's the reality. That's the problem. You're with someone who you're trying to manage all day, every day. Their emotional irregularities, their inability to communicate, their inability to be an adult. And what you're dealing with is basically you just inherited a grown-up child. So I got married to someone else's grown-up child, ultimately, and you're expected to take on this carer/father figure and look after this grown-up child, ultimately, who can't regulate their own emotions. And they're almost out of touch with reality most of the time. And that was the problem. And that is very difficult to explain to someone who's not been through it, who's not lived with someone like that. And that I managed for 10 years. I managed the ups and downs of this to try and manage this individual for 10 years. And add to that, the whole family, they're all in on the cover up. They're all in on this. They're all in on the cover up, and they will defend this behavior or the behavior of an individual like that to cover up for their own. And they'll try and blame you and say you're the problem. But that was the crux of it. It was a personality disorder. You cannot communicate with someone like that. You were just managing a grown-up child. And in the end, it just got too much for me.
Okay, was there a sign, when you were getting to know for the purposes of marriage, did you have a sign there, any red flags that
Yes.
came up there?
Yes, there's loads of red flags. But what happens is when you're in these, say, discussions, families are getting to know each other. I had a gut feeling something wasn't right. Something was not clicking. There was something missing. And even when I used to communicate with her, I noticed something was not right about the whole situation. Add to that, I noticed her father was, even before we got married, he was very pushy. He was very pushy. He's going on about, I want to make sure this marriage is registered, with the government and all of this. And I noticed these things. Her mum used to say to my mum things like, oh, my daughter's a bit simple. She's a bit slow. Just be patient with her, stuff like that. But my parents didn't say anything because they just thought it's okay. People are just concerned about their daughter. But when you look at it now, the whole thing was a cover up. And it's just a matter of getting someone to sign on the dotted line, finding a lamb to the slaughter, finding a mug to sign on the dotted line, and then handing it over and think, right, we've got him, we're secure, she's done. It was a setup. I mean, that's how I felt. And my gut feeling was telling me something's not right. But when everything's going on right, when families are talking, and it just felt this pressure from family, community, everyone, oh, you should be getting married, and you just get caught up in the roller coaster. And before you know it, you're married.
Yeah. Okay. And I guess a follow-up question to that is, what impact did divorce have on you? So from 2022 onwards, from that moment onwards, tell us the impact, because I know this is a deep one for you.
We have this idea of divorce. Like before you get married, you may have all of these ideas of what marriage might be like, what living with someone will be like, what having kids will be like. But until you're in that situation, you don't really know. It's like you can always imagine what it would be like to drive a car. But until the day you get in a car and you get on the motorway and put your foot down, you're never going to know the feeling of how it is. Just like divorce, we have this idea or perception of divorce in society. And I've known many people to get divorced prior to me getting divorced. And it's just a word. You don't really understand the emotional, mental, psychological ramifications of it until you're there. So the moment I issued those 3 talaqs, it is like your whole world as you knew it, the world as you saw it, just turned upside down. Just chaos. You are thrown into chaos, disarray. And a lot of cases, in my case, and in a lot of cases, what happens is immediately it turns out that unfortunately a lot of the women, a lot of the mothers, a lot of the wives, they seem to know the system a lot better than most of the men. It's like they were prepared. They are 10 steps ahead. They know the law. They know how to secure legal aid. They know how to play the abuse card. And in the Muslim community, Asian community, there's a lot of these angles of where they play the religious card and the racial card, saying he's backwards and he's, because he's Indian or Pakistani, Bangladeshi, he's backwards, he's oppressive, he looks down on women. Because of his religious views, it says women are second class to men, according to Islam. They have all of these things ready. So the moment I issued divorce, guess what? The same evening, I am arrested. So the day I issued talaq in the morning. In the evening, I am arrested now for historic abuse, 3 buzzwords. So it's financial abuse, coercive control, and threat to life. And she pulled all 3 cards. So they arrested me, night in the cell, and this whole roller coaster started. This whole roller coaster of disarray just started. And from that point onwards, kids, you're sort of at the family home. You don't see your kids. You don't know when you're going to see your kids. You've just been arrested. And by the time they release you, when you start getting the court documents start coming through to you, allegations of abuse, non-molestation orders, occupation orders, when all of this hits you, your whole world is effectively upside down. So it's like me removing you from your life today, throwing you in the middle of a jungle somewhere and just leaving you there. That's it. Imagine that. Take everything you know in your life as you know it right now. I remove you from your life and I drop you in the middle of a jungle. That is divorce right there. You're navigating through all the dangers of that jungle on your own, left for dead. That is how it is. you are left for dead.
Yeah, I mean, when you put it like that, yeah, well, what can you say? Okay, so you
I know.
mentioned um, children, right? So the last time um, I remember like watching some of your videos maybe a couple of years ago, and at that point, I remember you saying that you hadn't seen your children. I don't know what the update is. Tell me about the impact as now you become a single father, right? Tell me about that and your relationship with your children.
Yeah, I think what happens is people assume that you'll be a non-resident parent or a single father. Technically, I'm not even a father anymore. I have no contact with my children. I have not seen my children since March the 16th, 2022. I've not spoken to them. I don't know what they sound like. I don't even know what they look like in real terms. 4 years in a kid's life is a long time. I don't really even know what they look like. I don't even know where they are. That is the harsh reality that I want your listeners to understand, that a father can be removed out of a child's life just like that. And there's so many obstacles and barriers that can be put in and hurdles that can be put between you and the child, making it very difficult, making contact very difficult. And the resident parent holds all the cards. And 90% of the resident parent in the UK are mothers. That's no accident. But I ain't seen them. I have no relationship. Technically, I'm not even a father right now.
Sorry to hear that. One of the questions that the listeners now at this point would have is like, why do you not have contact with your children? So again, this is my understanding, and I stand to be corrected. From my understanding, usually that would be a situation where, for example, be it mother or father, they're an incompetent parent, or there's something about them that would not allow children to be around them. What would you say? What's the reason why you can't even have supervised contact?
The reason I have no contact is the family court system has failed. It's an incompetent family court system. There are major delays. My case has been lost in the system multiple times, accumulating to the 4 years that has now the 4 years that has now passed. So when people say you need contact, you can only have contact if you have communication with your ex. If your ex doesn't communicate with you, number one, if you have no contact with your ex, and then you're relying on the courts now to communicate and come up with a child access arrangement or some sort of child access orders. But East London Family Court has so many delays since COVID, the backlog and the delays. You might put your application in, you won't even get your first hearing in 6 months. It may take 6 months before you get one hearing. And if a mother's made abuse allegations, this is what you have to understand. In order to secure legal aid, they have to claim abuse. So they're coached into claiming abuse, and this all adds time to your case. This prolongs and extends it. Now, I'm still waiting for my first hearing. East London Family Court has lost my case on multiple occasions. When they initially gave me a non-mol and an occupation order, I was left homeless for 2 years. You're meant to go back within 2 to 3 months where they'd make a decision so they don't leave someone homeless. My case got lost in the system for 2 years. I was left homeless for 2 years. So I was living out the back of a van and sleeping on friends and family sofas for 2 years because they lost my case in the system. That was just to get me back home, number one, yeah? That was just to sort out my housing situation because I was removed from the home. Now, after that, the child access case was meant to start, which was 2 years ago. It's been lost in the system. Then it was closed down. We've now reapplied, but the application keeps getting pushed from one department to another and it's lost in the system. In the meantime, if you have no contact with say the mother, say the family of the mother, all of them, they are very much into this whole, he won't see the kids ever again. How dare he divorces? He won't see the kids ever again. They don't care about the kids. It's just more about their pride and ego. If you've got no communication with them, how do you get contact? People don't understand the logistics. Your contact is dependent on the resident parent. Your contact with your child will be dependent on how sensible the resident parent is, how mature the resident parent is, and how much the resident parent values these children's childhoods. And they're holding all the cards. I know many cases where some people have contact, but mother makes it so difficult playing silly games that father eventually gives up. And this idea, this fantasy that people have that contact is very easily available unless it's someone, it's very abusive. Abuse is just a word you can throw around in family court. And if a mother throws it around and you're a father, you are, especially if you're from the Muslim, Asian community or an ethnic community, you're labeled as backwards, you look down upon women. Contact is stopped easily, just like that.
I mean, this is astonishing, to be honest. Shocking just even listening to this. I don't know if the next question applies to you. And the next question would be, how do you bounce back from divorce? And the reason why I'm saying I'm not sure if it applies, just in case people are wondering, is because Brother Farouk is still in that process, in the sense that, he hasn't seen his children since, and that's 4 years. So I don't know if that's an unfair question, but I still put it to you.
No, that's a fair question, because look, the reason is, you got to understand, I deal with a lot of fathers that enter the system on a daily basis. I speak to a lot of guys going through it. I speak to a lot of guys who are on the other side of it, who have contact with their kids. You have to understand that even if you have contact with your kids, parenting depends on both parents to co-parent, right? And when people say, I hear these terms all the time, these two can't co-parent. It just needs one not to cooperate. That's what people don't understand. So if the resident parent has the children, say the mother, if the mother decides to start playing games, that's your co-parenting finished. So you got to remember, even after your divorce, even after your court case, let's say you've now got access to your children, you are tied to your ex for the rest of your life. And the quicker both parties come to terms with that and co-parent, it is better for themselves and the children. But 9 out of 10 cases, mothers seem to hold on to this bitterness and they use the kids forever. And I say to guys, this is where you have to rise above. You have to look at the bigger picture. And again, it's one of these terms that I use, eyes on the prize. It's your relationship with your children. So when you bounce back, you have to grow. Look, when you go through something like this, you will grow. There's no way you don't mature emotionally, mentally, spiritually. And when you grow and you can look at this situation as something smaller, when you look down on this situation, it's not a big deal. You won't get triggered. That's how you bounce back. You got to take this opportunity, take this pain and trauma to grow and elevate. That is the only way. The answer to all of this is, when I say grow, you got to understand, I've now studied all of this. I've been through a lot of trauma and pain myself here. And when you look at, say, the internet, all the advice that is given to men from the red pill space, the male improvement space, when you look at all these internet gurus giving advice, everything comes down to one thing, is self-improvement. If you look at, say, your divorce as an example, so I look at my divorce, the people watching, they look at their divorce. You have to understand the fact that you were in that situation, fact that you were with someone, you were not happy with the situation, or you ended up in this situation. These are the results of who you are. All this pain and trauma is a reference point and a result of who you are. That's what your life has produced. So then you have to say, if I don't want this result, if I want a change in the result, something has to change within me. I must have been projecting a certain type of energy or a certain frequency to attract this. You know the old saying, you see someone that's got problems, they've always got problems. They're always moaning about it. They always attract negativity. They always attract bad luck. That is because that's who you are. And if you want to change your results, you have to change who you are. So you got to take stock of, how did I end up here? What did I do? What am I lacking? What was I projecting? Do I even know who I am and what I wanted? Or did I just drift into this? So you have to take accountability, take stock of yourself, and you start from day one, step one. I want to change my life. I want to change my results. That's the first decision. And then you write a plan out as to, what do I want? How do I want to live? What sort of wife do I want? What sort of family do I want? And then you make a plan to bridge the gap to say, what do I need to do or change about me? What effort or work do I need to do to get to that result? And that's where your journey begins. But you take this pain, you take all this trauma, you take the heartbreak as a lesson, and you use it as fuel to propel you to take the necessary steps to elevate.
Okay. And you know what? That's what I wanted to ask you about. Tell me about this. You've got, just to be clear to the listeners, right? Brother Farouk's got an Instagram page. He's got a YouTube page. It's called Disqualified Dads. Also a TikTok page called Disqualified Dads. I noticed your you do a lot of martial arts. You're a coach as well. Tell us about that. Tell us about why these pages are set up, and tell us about your title as coach, and tell us about your martial arts as well.
Right. So when you're going through a lot of pain and trauma, all your impurities come to the surface. Your nervous system is shot to bits. You are constantly high on adrenaline. And when you're separated from your children, I mean, that pain right there, when you don't know where your children are, you don't know when you're going to see them, you don't know if you're going to see them. The pain is so concentrated that half the time you're praying for death. I used to go to bed, and at times I used to pray. I used to say, Ya Allah, if you take me in my sleep, I don't have to face this anymore. I don't have to feel this anymore. I was almost praying for death. And whilst I'm praying for death, in the same breath, I used to pray, Ya Allah, do not forsake me. Do not forsake me, because you are in such pain. Now, when you're in that much pain, your ego, your pride, everything is stripped away. You are stripped to your core of who you are. What is left during this pain is the core root character of who you are, not what society gave you, not the titles your family, your friends, or your company gave you. You're not who you thought you were. Everything, all your masks have been stripped away. You're no longer a father. You're no longer a husband. You're no longer your titles as a son, brother, friend, employee. All of this is gone. There's nothing left. When you are stripped to your core, you find out who you are. When you're in that much pain, the aspect of your personality, which was the people pleaser, where, we all have a little bit of people pleaser in us. So on the spectrum, you have narcissists, and then you've got people pleasers, right? One end of the spectrum to the other. And most people that end up in this situation, it turns out they were all people pleasers most of the time. But all of that within you is stripped away. And when you're no longer a people pleaser, you start thinking for yourself. The programming that you had from society, community bringing, which mosque you went, who you listened to, what you watched on TV, what films you watched, all of this programming is stripped away. And once this programming was stripped away, I could see clearly. I could think clearly. That's when I had to formulate a game plan. I thought, right, I need to get out of this somehow. I need to get to my children. I need to somehow keep going, ultimately. And because at that time, once I had this realization, this is after months of pain, I had this realization, I had this epiphany, and this hit me. And previously, because I've studied martial arts for a long time, there was a lot of martial arts philosophy that we hear, but we don't fully understand. There's a lot of quotes that Bruce Lee used to say that I heard, but I never fully understood. He said, know yourself to know others. Most people don't know themselves. I didn't know myself. But when you're in pain, you find out who you are. Like I said, you're fully in touch with your soul and your spirit because you're going through that much pain. And remember, when you're in pain, time seems to go on forever. Every second, you feel every second and every minute of every day. So that's when I started tapping into the martial arts philosophy. And with martial arts philosophy, again, we use that with the family court when I speak to guys. You might go in, you might lose a round, but in any sort of strategy or war or combat, there's a strategic element to it. So there's the emotion that you're dealing with. There's the chaos that you're dealing with, but you have to know when to defend, when to attack, when to buy time, when to rest, when to tangle your opponent up. So when you look at the strategy in amongst all this chaos, you still have to use that. You have to keep your wits about you. You have to keep your emotions in check. So that's when I merged the philosophy from martial arts into the scenario and the situation I was in. I was ultimately in the trenches. And when you're in the trenches, the key is you need to survive. When you enter this system and you're going through that much pain, your job is to survive. Now, your brain's going to play games with you. Your brain will tease you. It will show you images of your children. You'll start reminiscing about the life you had and how you were with your children. If you sit there and torture yourself, you're just going to suffer. You won't survive. When you're in the trenches, your job is just to survive. Get through that day, get through the hour. When an attack comes in, you need to stand up, deal with that attack, and then get back to your post. That is the first 6 to 8 months of family court or entering the divorce system. So that's when I use the philosophies from martial arts. In my own mind, I use them to survive ultimately. And as I start getting emotionally a little bit stronger, I started training again. So I started going back to the gym. I started training on the streets first. I started using bricks and blocks and stuff like that just to train. Then I eventually got to a gym. Then I went back to my sensei, started doing my martial arts again, just to keep my mental health strong, keep my mind in check ultimately. But that's where I use the martial arts philosophy in life. So it's not about the martial arts, but it's more about the philosophy and understanding these philosophies and how to implement them into your life.
All right. Next question then. Has there been a marriage search after the divorce?
Yeah. So after the divorce, I have been looking into the marriage market, the dating market, to see what's out there and see what's going on. And what I've realized is, I think ultimately for a lot of middle-aged men, a lot of guys in their 40s, especially from the community, what happens is after divorce, you are like a nomad. Because we come from a community where family ties, family life is very strong. When you no longer have the title of father, husband, and you're living on your own, you got to sort out your own food and live that sort of bachelor life. We're not used to it as a community, middle age. We are like nomads. You don't fit in anywhere within the community. And I believe a lot of these guys are like nomads. So anyway, going back to the marriage market, looking into the marriage market is very difficult. It's like a jungle out there. It is tough and how can I put it? It's very challenging. I found it very challenging ultimately.
Tell us about that, because I was going to ask you about your marriage search experience, what challenges you faced.
Yeah, look, ultimately, firstly, if you go onto the apps in themselves, I find very difficult. They are very difficult to navigate. There's a lot of time wasting that goes on. And I think for both parties, because there's so much choice on apps, there's a lot of just back and forth and swipe right, swipe left, because I think you're just spoiled for choice to some degree. And I think generally, though, the issue I find is what women are looking for. I just think the expectation that social media has set about what a man is and what they should be looking for, I just think it's unrealistic. So I think a lot of women have an unrealistic expectation of what they're going to find or what their worth is because of what social media has told them. Because think about it, when you go on TikTok, Instagram, and I occasionally have a look, what seems to be a common theme now and is popular is this man bashing. You've got women bashing men. Men ain't good enough. If he ain't providing, if he ain't doing this, he's not good enough. He's not even a man. You see other men bashing men. Everyone just seems to be bashing men. Men are being told they're not good enough. We have a big issue now where a man's value is only linked to money now, period. I've listened to podcasts now with women saying, and these are look credible people on at face value. All of this stuff sounds really good. Now, one podcast specifically, they pressed this woman. She kept saying he should lead more and he should lead better, and he needs to be doing this and that. But she kept saying he needs to lead better. When they said, "What does that look like? What does that mean, leading better?" It turns out she goes, "Well, he needs to make more money. He needs to bring more to the table." Now, so when we broke it down, this is the problem I've noticed. This whole theme is a man's value seems to be only linked with money now, number one. A lot of women I find, especially on this whole dating marriage scene, is they all keep pushing one thing, and Islam has been hijacked. They keep saying Islamically, you're meant to provide and pay for everything. Now, I've known women who are very practicing all the way to very liberal people. Yeah, I'm not saying they're not practicing, they're just very liberal in their practice and how they live, which is fine, nothing to do with me. But one consistent theme I've noticed from top to bottom, from both ends of the spectrum, is they all go on about the money. What I think is marriage is just a business now. Marriage and a husband is a business of how to extract value. That's it. How to extract financial value. And they keep pushing this. Islamically, it's your job to provide. You need to pay for everything. They just keep pushing this aggressively, which I find very off-putting personally. But that's the theme I'm noticing ultimately. Also, like I said, there's too much choice on the apps. So I don't know if the apps actually work for anyone. And generally also with the marriage theme is I've noticed people are very misleading. People are very misleading. Those that talk about companionship, love and spending time together and being there for one another, people are there to take advantage, especially when you're at the bottom. Like I said, I've been on the marriage circuit. And even as a man, I believe some women will take advantage. They will tell you about companionship. They will talk about unity and Islam and nikah and, you know, all of these things, which you think, okay, this is legit. But ultimately, push comes to shove, they are out for themselves. That old school companionship where you've got my back, I've got yours, it ain't there. It's you're meant to have their back, but when you need someone to have your back, they're not there. It's just not seen like that, and it's accepted. So man is just there for finances, and he's just there as an emotional punch bag or a backup, but he doesn't get none of that in return. Just find it very selfish. I'll be straight with you, bro. I find it women out there, the women that I bumped into, I find it's like some of the most selfish people I've ever seen. Some of the women I've spoken to, some of the women I have met, selfish. The word that comes to mind is selfish.
There are many sisters that would literally be very upset right now.
You know what? I think I'm being too considerate. I need to be more blunt. I'm telling you now, women are selfish by nature, but this society now where we are has brought out that bit of them. That bit where they're naturally selfish has been fully opened up, and they lead with selfishness straight up.
Okay, so a few follow-up questions. The first one is, any personal experience in your search for marriage?
Yeah, listen, I'll be straight with you. Look, I'll put it out there. I have been on the marriage circuit. I know guys who have multiple wives. I know guys who had multiple nikahs on and off, ongoing, constantly. I've seen what's going on. Now, my own experience as well, like I said, I was with someone. I had a nikah with someone. And again, what turns out when you spend time with someone, selfishness, one-sided, take. And when you're vulnerable, you think you know someone, you think someone's got your back. But like I said, when you need them, when you're down and they're not there, I've experienced it. I've seen it. People that you would look at and think, nah, not that person. No way. Not her. They would do that. I've been in relationships and I've seen the nature of it firsthand, selfishness. And most guys don't see it, bro. That's how most guys have ended up divorced. That's how most people have ended up without their children. They've ended up in this situation because men don't operate on this paradigm. They don't use this language. They don't understand what's going on half the time. And my experience is, like I said, selfish, one way. And the thing is, I'll tell you where this stems from. This stems from the conditioning, the environment we are in. You know, Disney, Bollywood, Boy Meets Girl. The expectation is the man is there to chase the woman. The woman is the prize. But let me tell you one thing that women say as well, yeah? I could be a lot worse. I bring you a lot of peace. I don't give you any headache. The bar is so low. The bar has been set so low for women's expectation is the fact that you don't give me a headache is a bonus, is like a good thing. This is what I should be aiming for. And the point is, when you're not here, I don't have a headache. So why do I even need you around to, you know, the bar is set so low where the fact that a woman doesn't give you headache, doesn't give you stress, that is what she brings. That's what you're aiming for. That's how low the bar is. She doesn't give me any headache. She doesn't give me any stress. So therefore she's a keeper. But that's how low the bar has been set overall. Like I said, I'm telling you now, it may sound wrong. It may sound like I'm bashing women, but I've done field research. I've studied this now.
Okay, one of the other things that you mentioned, that a man's worth seems to be defined by money or wealth, right? And I'm just thinking out loud here. I think we have a problem here if that seems to be the case on a general basis. The reason I say that, putting aside or parking aside the point that defining somebody by wealth is not necessarily a good thing. So parking that point aside, in the current climate, the cost of living, you know, most of this country, most of the people in this country are living paycheck to paycheck. Now, if, especially the people from like my ends, which is London ends, now, if a man is being visualized or defined or seen as, you know, just looking at their wealth kind of thing, well, majority of us wouldn't come under the category of being wealthy. So by definition, we're not really getting anywhere.
Yeah, I think you got to put this into perspective and subjective, and you got to put this into context. Now, I'm not saying that, you know, this should not be looked at. I'm not saying it's necessarily a bad thing, but it's not the only thing that measures a man. That it's definitely a measuring stick, but that's not the only measure of a man. And the problem I have is what's being promoted. When you look on social media, you look on these podcasts, what I'm trying to say to you is this brainwashing and conditioning that I'm telling you about. So look, I've told you my experience in the marriage market. I've seen what's out there. I've seen the expectation. I've seen the man bashing that is going on. And I'm saying the dangers of what we are teaching our young men that are growing up. that your value is only linked to money. And that's the point. So, yes, there's a practical aspect to it. Have some ambition, go and earn money. There's no issue with that. And be wealthy is not an issue with that. But it's what we have programmed our women to believe, that this is the only value a man should have. This is the only man you should be looking at. And we're telling young men, if you ain't got six figures, six pack, what's the other one, 6 foot, you're no good. You're not part of 1%. This community was built on the back of our forefathers, our grandfathers, and our fathers doing jobs that no one wanted to do, bro. Opening up shops, cab driving, railway, underground buses, laboring. Do you know what I mean? Factories. This is what this community was built on. But we now look upon it like they're nothing. They're no one. So according to today's value, I'm saying what our fathers, grandfathers had no value, really. They don't measure up. The Prophet ﷺ was illiterate. He wasn't flash. And there's practicing sisters that keep, they talk about Islam, they talk about practicing Islam and stuff like that. But when it comes to this, they measure in with that. Where does it say that these money's the be all and end all? Where did the Prophet demonstrate this? The Prophet was broke most of his life. He was illiterate. So are we saying he wouldn't measure up? And this is the point I'm making, is not the practical aspect that, yes, we all need money. We need money to live. I need money to get this message out there. There's no issue with that. What I've got an issue with is linking a man's value to money only. That's the only measuring stick that we are telling women, that this is the only men that are worth anything. That's the problem. I'm talking about the message we are sending out to men, and what we have now taught women, or how women perceive men. It's just through money, from what I have seen.
What's the difference between having standards and unrealistic expectations? What do you think?
I think, look, there's nothing wrong with having standards, but the problem with the standards that we have is only women are allowed to have standards in this society. When a man has standards, he's called shallow. This is what I'm saying. When a man says, I want a woman to be like this, this, or this, or I don't want no one with 3 kids, I don't want to take on no one else's family. I've seen how these men are looked at. They're looked at shallow, they're looked at irresponsible, they're looked down upon. But when a woman has standards, she has standards, you go, girl, you deserve it. When a man says the same thing, it's not the same response. Look, you're on social media, yeah? I am sure you've seen the arguments that go back and forth. It just seems to be very clear to me that we can all have standards, but the only standards that are accepted in society for women to have standards. It's okay for sisters to say, he should be leading better, he should be earning this, he should be providing, he should be doing all of that, no problem. But when a man says, I actually want a wife that does this, or looks like this, or has this, or doesn't have 2 or 3 kids, or whatever it is, yeah, those men are looked down upon. Those men are looked down upon. When a man says, I want a second wife, he's looked down upon. They're saying they're referring to him like he's doing something wrong. When a man has standards, he might even want 2 or 3 or 4 wives. Why are those men looked upon differently? I've seen how women respond I've told women, look, I'm going to have multiple wives. Are you still game? I've told them openly, I've got standards, and one woman will not complete the standards I have. I'm going to need 2 or 3. You should see the response you get, the way you are looked upon. And the position, the framing is, if you cared about me, if you saw me as important, it's all about me, me, me. A man should be sacrificing unfortunately, for the other party, for the woman, constantly. This is the programming that we have been subjected to, and we don't even know it.
So, bro, just so we're clear, you're looking for more than one wife?
I'm looking for 4, bro. I got 4 slots on the go all day, every day. And I'll say it loudly and I'll say it proudly. And this is my point. Men are scared to openly say this. Why? We have been shamed and bullied into keeping quiet about this. I have no kids. I've got nothing to lose. I can live free, bro. It doesn't matter. I'll say it loudly and proudly. And I've met women, I've told them straight up, you could be number 1, 2, 3, or 4. Which space do you want? I tell him openly, I'm not sneaking around like a little boy, hiding and living in this secrecy or whatnot. I'm saying live as a man, live to your true core, your true value, in alignment with who you are, and say it proudly and loudly. That's a man right there. Not someone that needs to sneak around and hide, and you're worried about losing her and this and that. This is what I'm talking about. When a man has standards, when you know yourself, when you know who you are, and you accept yourself as you see yourself, and then you live by that. You live in alignment. But men, you see that? But you see why men are scared to come out and say this openly.
So, on that point, women who are listening, they're saying, okay, Brother Farouk, tell us then, what makes you think that you can adopt polygamy? Like, are you
Why
going to
not?
be there financially? Can you do it?
You don't need to do it, brother. Listen, the thing is, right, these are all buzzwords, right? Again, financially. Most of these women are single mums, yeah? All these single mothers, they're getting CMS from their exes 9 out of 10 times. They're getting benefits from the government, yeah? And most of them have got jobs. They don't need me to provide for them. This is not another bank check, yeah? This is a nikah where you've got a man in your life, yeah? This is not a business deal. This is not a transaction. I'm not here to pay you. My point is, this Islam has been hijacked. Now, most of these women, like I said, they need a man in their life. They need a relationship. They need companionship. That's when misyara marriages come into it. You don't have to provide for them. They're already being provided for. The government's providing for them. Do you know what I mean? And I won't provide for a woman unless she's giving me a child. Simple.
Okay. The next question is, again, a general question, right? So a divorced person who's looking for marriage, right? From a general point of view, a lot of them have said to us that once their status is known, interest in them drops sharply. And so at this point, many of them now consider delaying disclosure of the fact that they are divorced just to be seen as a person first. Now, this is be it man or woman. Essentially, what they do is when they mention that they're divorced, right, the doors are closed on them. So what some of them have tried to do is basically tell that the aspect of the fact that they are divorced later on down the line. What's your thoughts around that? What do you think?
See, the thoughts are, and this is what I'm talking about. Everything I'm talking about aligns back to one thing. Yeah? Now, he has to lie. He has to be secretive because his options are going to be limited or people will be put off. Not unless you're that guy. Not unless you become the person that people want. Let me put it this way. If a woman likes you enough, it doesn't matter if you're divorced 3 times or 4 times. If she likes you, nothing's an issue. Remember that. But the fact is, she doesn't like you. She's settling for you. So now we've got a checklist. Does he earn money? Does he do this? How many times has he been divorced? How many kids? If a girl likes you, guess what? That checklist goes out the window. So what I say to them guys is, if you have to lie and live in sort of secrecy and play these games, how do you see yourself deep down in your subconscious? You don't feel you're worth it. You don't feel you have any value. You don't feel anyone will want to marry you or that anyone will like you. This is the problem. This is how you see yourself. If you're lying about these things, right, yeah, petty things, I call these now very minor petty things, right, yeah. I'm openly telling them on the first date that I'm looking for multiple wives, and you're telling me guys are going around scared to even say they're divorced. Really? Now, this is the point. You need to go and improve. You have to look into yourself. You have to take a decision about your life and start taking yourself seriously. And it goes back to self-improvement. Look, when I first went on the dating app, yeah, I used the dating app to test myself, right? Yeah. I thought, okay, put my pictures up, wrote out a profile. Now, was I getting responses from the women that I liked? So you got to ask yourself, are you getting the responses from the women that you like? Are you getting the likes back from the women that you like? If you're not getting the results that you want, the problem is you. That's the first reference point. Use the app as a reference point. If you're not getting the right type of clicks or likes that you want from the people you want, you have to ask yourself why. Why am I not getting the likes? What is it about me they're not choosing? This is a reference point for you to go and work on yourself, work on your looks, work on your body, work on your mind, work on your spirit. You need to grow in all areas. Once you fill your cup fully, once you've got something to give, you vibrate on a different frequency. You project a different energy, and that's when you attract different things. But the first thing is self-love. You have to love yourself. You have to build yourself up. You have to see value within yourself by doing the work. That's what I say to guys. The fact that you have to lie about petty things like that, I find shocking. I find it very shocking. I didn't even think this was an issue anymore, being divorced. Like I said, 60% of Muslim marriages now end up in divorce problem. Majority of our community,
60? Wow, that's
60%.
a big number.
That's what this, one of these, imam, this guy that works in the Islamic Council told me. 60 to 70% are ending up in divorce. Divorce is now rife in our community. You got to understand, I know people that have been in 1-2 year marriages and divorced. Like first time marriages, divorced. So I'm saying, look, I could be straight with you. Once you've been through 1 or 2, 3 divorces, bro, it's not that big a deal. Like, it's whatever. It doesn't even matter. I'm not even counting anymore. It's all good. So, yeah, so don't worry about it. So to those guys, number one, you need to shift your paradigm. That whole stigma about divorce that you've got in your head is because you've got an issue with it. Because we grew up in an era when this was frowned upon, especially in the Asian community. So I would say, number one, look at yourself, start working on yourself, and look at areas of improvement. We can all improve, and start taking yourself seriously. If you don't see value in yourself, listen, no one else is going to see value in you. If you don't love yourself first, no one else is capable of loving you. If you're not capable of loving yourself, no one's going to love you, bro. And that's what I'm saying, guys. Self-improvement is the answer to everything, to all of it.
I'm going to put down an argument and I want to know your views, right?
Mm-hmm.
The argument is, or the question is, why is a man who is divorced often seen as experienced, but a divorced woman is seen as baggage? What's your response to that?
Because my response is because of the community and the era we grew up in. So we come from a toxic community. The South Asian community is toxic. We were brought up believing this. Films, Bollywood, a divorced woman. Think about this. We come from a community and we come from a culture where this was looked down upon. Divorced women were looked down upon badly. Our parents, our grandparents probably looked down upon divorced women because that's how they were conditioned in the environment they grew up in. So this is where Islam comes in. Where does it say anywhere in Islam to look down upon divorced women? Islam gave women rights. So when you say this is a problem of our conditioning, but I understand that. I've reflected on all of this. I have no issue with divorced women. No one should be looking down upon divorced women or women with children, period. I do not do that, and I'm strongly against that. This is cultural conditioning from our upbringing as an Asian community. That's where this comes from. That's the answer. No argument.
Yeah, and fair enough. And next question is, when looking for marriage, green flags are more important than red flags. Agree or disagree?
Look, the thing is this here. I think we've all got green and red flags. It's just the magnitude of these flags. I think you got to weigh up what it is. It depends on the green flag and it depends on the red flag. You could say green flag, she's got great cooking, but red flag, she's a complete narcissist and she's got those personality disorder. Once you've been through it, you can sense it. That's a major red flag. Like, you avoid it, regardless of the cooking. Avoid at all cost. So you got to weigh them up. You got to weigh them up, bro. You got to weigh up every situation for what it is.
All right. And last general question. Generally speaking, the British Muslim community are finding it difficult to get married, right?
Right.
What solutions would you propose?
That's a good question, actually. From what I've seen, it seems to be easier to do haram than it is to do halal. This is a sign of end times. Haram will be easier to do because halal has been made so difficult. You with me? So let's take the argument for what you said. Valuing a man's value is linked to money. So let's say a young woman now, because of this conditioning that's coming from all angles, social media, and this man bashing. Let's say this girl is looking for a potential in marriage. Let's say a guy comes out. He's a doctor. He just come out of university, but he's in debt. He's in university debts. He doesn't have the 6 figures. He cannot give you this dream life that's been sold to you, that he has to provide a house and a car and 6 figures. But he's a doctor. He's going to make it. He's already made it, and he's going to make it one day. That man, unfortunately, is seen as not a good catch. He's a doctor, educated, manners, class, good family. But guess what? Because he ain't got the flash, he's now no longer a player. He's off the table. He's no longer even a good choice. And this is my point. A girl will pass up an opportunity like that to aim for something that she's seen on TikTok or Instagram or something that she's heard of, and they will delay and delay because of what society has told us. We need to pull back and make it clear that some of the expectations, some of the things we see on social media, they're not real. And also, a man might not have the money today. Money will come and go. He might make it today, lose it tomorrow, make it all over again. It's the man, the character, the habits, the ethics, the behaviors that makes the money. It's not the money that makes the man. Remember this.
Okay, so Brother Farouk, we're going to play a few games.
Let's go.
I call this game red light, green light. I'm going to give you some scenarios and you got the option of either giving the potential a red light, the green light. You got the option of amber light as well. Okay. All right. So a potential who cannot cook but has good deen.
I'd have to go for amber.
Okay. A potential on the deen but has a previous criminal conviction.
It's a dangerous game. This is, I would say amber. I'd have to go amber.
Okay. A potential with a social media page with many opposite gender followers.
Amber. I don't necessarily see it as a biggie. It could be a business.
A potential who does not speak to family, i.e. lives independently.
I would say amber. I'd need more context.
Okay. A potential with a bad past, but is a good person today.
Yeah, I would say amber.
A person who has suffered abuse in the past, but has healed today.
I would say red. You need to look into it a bit more. I would say red.
So the next one is a potential who wants to insert a clause in her nikah contract that you cannot get another wife whilst married to her.
Well, that's a red flag right there. It's a major red flag.
All right. And next game is what we call the rapid fire round. Okay. I'm going to give you a series of questions, and whatever comes to your head, you got to say it. Okay.
Okay.
All right. So once you are married, where would you take your spouse to eat on a first date?
Turkish. Turkish, can't go wrong.
Okay. What is the best age to get married?
I think once you know yourself. Best age to get married is once you know who you truly are.
What percentage of British Muslims looking for marriage are serious about marriage?
60% have to be serious, must be serious.
If your spouse says to you that they want you off social media, what would be your response?
You don't tell me what to do. No one tells me what to do.
How long should one get to know a potential before making the decision to marry them?
For me personally, I would say give it 4 to 6 months. Constant communication on the phone at least. Speaking on the phone to get a good understanding of the personality. If you're older or divorced, I would say don't hang about. Couple of months, make a decision. If you're younger, take a little bit longer.
What method is the most effective to find a spouse? Apps, marriage events, matchmakers, matrimonial websites, marriage bureaus?
Currently, we have to stick with technology apps. That's the only real key. That's the only real entry into that world on a mass scale.
Would you sign a prenuptial agreement?
Absolutely, yes.
Mental health or physical health?
Mental health, because a strong mind can carry a weak body, but a strong body can't carry a weak mind.
What do you think it takes to be in a marriage that lasts forever?
Patience, but ultimately chemistry. Chemistry, banter, camaraderie. If you got that, you can go forever.
If there was a book written on you, what would be the title of the book?
I would say Mr. Motivator. It's got to be motivation. That's what I do. Motivation. That's the title.
What do British Muslims looking for marriage say privately but hesitate to admit publicly?
I think men are scared to really say how they feel about some of the women's behaviors that they've seen, the expectations, and the fact that some men may like to have a second wife. They won't say out publicly.
All right, so for the listeners, marriage profile time. So, Brother Farook, first we're just going to focus on you. So, yes. What is your age?
It is estimated between 43 and 44. I'm pretty certain it's 43.
What is your height?
5'11".
What's your location?
East London.
Ethnicity?
Gujarati Indian background.
Your occupation?
I'm an engineer transitioning into a full-time coach / YouTuber podcaster.
Now let's focus on what you're looking for. What's your age range preference?
My age range is 28 to 50.
Your height preference?
I'm easy. I don't really... Women come in all shapes and sizes, so I'm open. I'm easy.
Location preference?
Ideally around the whole sort of London area. To be fair, London area, because I'm flexible.
Ethnicity preference?
I'm easy. I'm open.
Occupation preference?
I'm easy. Whatever. Let's go.
Apart from what we've already just discussed, in summary, couple of lines, what are you looking for?
Someone that's got a sense of humor, bit of chemistry, companionship, sense of humor. Ultimately, you got to accept that I am a polygamous man, and that's it. And someone, the main thing is, you got to like me. She has to really like me. That's the thing. I only like women who like me, period. That's it. If you really like me, that's it. That's good.
Excellent. Okay, so that's the end of the episode then, Brother Farook. You know what? Jazakumullah khair for coming on to the episode and being a guest. Any final thoughts from you?
Thank you for this opportunity, and I don't want anything I've said to be misconstrued. It's just, I think it's best we be open and honest now and express ourselves honestly. That's the meaning of life, the ability to express yourself fully. That's all I'm doing. But thank you for your time. I appreciate the opportunity.
If you fit the criteria of the guest today, and if you are interested in considering the guest for marriage, then please email us the following details: your name, age, location, height, occupation, ethnicity, marital status, family contact name, and family contact details. Our email address is divorcedmuslims@gmail.com. Remember the golden rule: only family details will be exchanged. If we have no family details, then the request will be ignored. If you want to be a guest on this podcast, or if you want to contact us, then please email us. Our email address is divorcedmuslims@gmail.com.
إليك تلتمس وفي